here we go, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Deals and Deadlines with the super agent, the always Natalie attired Hadley Engelhardt. I'm Matt Chernoff.
Who's nicely dressed today.
Well, I have to keep up with the Joneses, or the Engelhardts in this case. We have a lot to cover here today. Our sports business podcast will include looking back at All-Star Week in Atlanta, SEC Media Days also in downtown Atlanta, also some talks of baseball, salary cap, all those discussions will happen, and another agent, another one of these kind of guys. Mike McCartney will join us. He's Kirk Cousins' agent, and gosh knows Kirk has been in the news for a while, so we'll have him join us coming up. But Hadley, let's start right there. The city of Atlanta was very busy playing the role of host, starting with All-Star Week in Atlanta, where we are doing our show inside the Battery. First of all, I want to say this just from kind of going through it. I thought everybody did a great job. From the Braves, Major League Baseball, the networks, all of it, this facility, this campus, hosted what was a huge turnout for fans that started on Friday and then finished up with the All-Star Game on Tuesday night. I think it was everything that the business owners and the community wanted.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I went to several of the events here with some people from out of town, and they just felt some of them was the first time even at the Battery, and we're just amazed with the Battery, the beauty of it. Everything ran smoothly. The people working the game, in fact, I talked to one of the ushers who's works for the Braves and works for Truist Park, but for this week, they are hired by MLB Baseball. Different mindset, different rules. I think everything went well. The weather cooperated. It was hot.
Oh, it was hot.
It was very hot. But it was a job well done. And I know we'll talk more about the numbers and you know what this means for Major League Baseball. But overall, I would say a thumbs up for the city of Atlanta on this weekend.
Okay, so I was at the Home Run Derby, and I've been to All-Star games before. I had not been to a Derby, and I've always said on TV the Derby could be done so much better if it was edited, right? But you have that opportunity. When you're there, don't laugh at this, it reminds me sort of like being at a wrestling match, that it's sort of better on TV. You get the background, you get the at home, you get the stuff in the, in the dressing room. You don't get the mic'd up players at the game. You don't get a lot of the stuff that you're getting on TV. That said, I mean, like you talked about, it was warm. It was a long event. I don't know what baseball can do to make it go quicker, because these guys were panting by the second and the finals, because it is that hot and they're swinging 50, 60, 70 times. So it's one of those things that everybody says we can tweak and do better. I don't know what you can do. It's a moneymaker for baseball, and it did nearly 6 million viewers, which was a 5% increase from a year ago.
Yeah, of the events this weekend, the one that had a bump up in viewership was the Home Run Derby. I think there's some tweaking as well that could be done, because, again, it's so long. And, as a viewer, you just kind of want it to end a little bit sooner. Could they reduce the number of participants, the number of at-bats, the number of rounds? There's so many things they can do, but the fact that viewership was up is a positive. The excitement was there. The electricity was there. Having a first-time catcher winning it is exciting. So I think there's a lot of positive they can build off of. I do know, I spoke with someone with the Philadelphia Phillies. They had a group of 40 people from that organization, from the marketing and branding side of things and the business side, in town, which they do every year. The next host comes in town to observe, and talking to them after some of the events, there's some things that they really liked and some things that they want to tweak, because, again, they don't want to create a bad experience for the in-person viewer, because at home it's great. You got all the other things going on, but they really want to make it a great experience for the people who attend it.
So I'm glad to hear that, and here's why. Because I was talking to some people who said, well, why do they need the break between the round and then the T-Mobile bonus? I said, well, there's more commercials to sell.
Correct.
Why do they want to shorten the event where made for TV, it's 3 hours? I mean, it's long, but they have built-in breaks all these different places, and you get a sponsor on the bonus round, and you get sponsor for the longest ball. Like, from a money-making standpoint, this is what you and I talk about a lot. I almost said very rarely. Never will we shorten seasons, never will we shorten playoff rounds, and never will we shorten events, because it's better for the stadium crowd, because you're giving back money on the TV side.
Correct. And listen, we always say this time and time again, it all comes down to the mighty dollar. And so if there's more ad space, more branding opportunities, they're going to go after those things. So there's a way always to tweak things that may affect you financially, but it's a better experience. And that's where you have to weigh it and kind of figure out what the next things are. But overall, from the Futures game all the way to the All-Star game, the tribute for Hank Aaron.
Let's talk about that. So let's go over the Tuesday night, because I thought, and we'll talk about ratings and all the things, but from just the experience, I thought they did a great job. I thought from the introductions to the national anthem, the Hank Aaron tribute, I don't know how they kept that quiet, how well they did that. For those who didn't see it, go back YouTube and watch it. but on TV it looked great. I talked to people in the stadium who said it was unbelievable. Like, they nailed that on every level.
They hit a home run, no pun intended, with the greatest to ever do it. It was just a great tribute to him. He is Atlanta. Everyone's embraced him, and Major League Baseball and the world has embraced him. The problem with why the ratings are potentially down for the game itself is the obvious. It's very long. It gets late into the night, and people just don't want to continue it. Now, the ending was different and exciting because we had the tie, and they had the home run hit off, which was kind of a neat thing.
The swing off, Hadley.
Oh, excuse me.
Make sure you get it right, because they're going to sell that too, and that'll be sponsored soon.
No, and that was great. Will that ever happen again? Who knows? But just the way it ended was great, and the fact that Kyle Schwarber did it was, I think, awesome. And, so there's a lot of positives, but again, it was late in the night.
Right.
So not everyone saw it. A lot of people that I even spoke with this morning before we're taping this saw it on highlights or read about it, when they got up this morning. So they didn't get to see it live because it is too long.
Well, that's the thing, right? So the social part of it, the digital part, you'll get to see the highlights the way you want to, which is fine. I would add, it was a 3-hour and 20-minute game, which sounds long, and that's a credit to what the pitch clock has done. There were a lot of other things in that game, from pulling Freddie Freeman off the field in the middle of the game to give him a tribute for the Atlanta fans, the Hank Aaron tribute, like any number of things that happened that would slow a game down. Credit again to the pitch clock. In the old days, that's a 4-hour game with all those other things they're building into an All-Star game.
Correct. And I think one of the things that they've been doing, even during the season, having players mic'd up live is awesome. If anyone has not seen it yet, the Clayton Kershaw thing was amazing. It was great banter. It was great. I mean, they couldn't have scripted it better for Hollywood, the way that whole thing played out. And so there's a lot of good things they're doing. Major League Baseball, the good news is, we've talked about this, they're trying.
Sure.
They are, with the draft being at the same city and all that kind of stuff, and with the Futures game followed by the Celebrity game, they are really trying to do a lot of things. Interesting fact, by the way, that I found out while I was at the Futures game, which you may not know this. The percentage of players that make it to the major leagues that play in the Futures game, if you had to take a wild guess, what would you think that number would be?
From the rosters that are there, I'm going to guess 30% make it.
90%
really
play in a big league game.
At least get a game.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the numbers get smaller to become it. I think it was 20-something% become actual MLB All-Stars. Guys that play multiple years is like 30-40%. But 90%, 9 out of 10 guys that play in a Futures game since the beginning of it play in a big league game.
So that was one of the two big events happening. Meanwhile, in downtown Atlanta this past week, SEC Media Days, which again has become a revenue producer and a sort of bullet point on the calendar, a tent pole for the SEC, where they get all the coaches together. It's a made-for-TV event for ESPN, for the SEC network, but there are some nuggets of interest that come out of it, like the commissioner, Greg Sankey. You talked about several things that I wanted to pick your brain about from a business standpoint. There's always talk of expansion. It's always going to be talk of expansion. The question then becomes about fees to get out of deals in other conferences, fees to get into an SEC. What does that do to the numbers for TV? Like, there are a lot of elements in there. And also you want to find the teams, and I'll say the brands, that fit the SEC's future.
Yeah, I think in the short term, I don't think the SEC is going to do anything right now. With the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, that was a big move to solidify the power of the SEC. I think Sankey and his cohorts in the Power Five are more focused now on the championship, on what's the best formula to make the best championship. And I've said this time and time again, I think in the next 5 years, I think SEC football and the other power conferences are going to remove themselves from the university's umbrella so they can further grow and use the money that they're bringing the entire athletic program to grow their brands. And so I think it's awesome, and I love the media going. I know you're going down to do some of the stuff today. It's great for the branding. It's great for building it. It's great for building up the players. It adds to their NIL values. I mean, it really has become a true platform to really grow brands, both from a university, from a coaching standpoint, and from a player standpoint.
So the other thing Greg Sankey did talk about, to Hadley's point, was the expansion of the college football playoff, which nothing ever stays where it is. They also talked about the expansion of the NCAA tournament, because nothing ever stays where the number is. We're at 12 teams. We're going to tease everybody with 14 and then get to 16, whether that's this coming year or the next year. At some point, we're going to have 16 teams. But the format is what these commissioners, and you said Power 5, we're Power 4 now, and soon enough, we might be Power 2 when this is all done. So how does this behoove the SEC and the Big Ten mostly? That's what's going to be at stake on how to format 14 or 16 teams.
And I think they're in disagreement. Some think that there should be 5 automatic bids. I think the Big Ten thinks there should be 4 automatic bids. So they've got to come to an agreement. Basically, what their platform is that they don't want to give at-large bids that are deserving from the power conferences to these other conferences because they win a conference that's inferior to the SEC. You finish in 5th place in the SEC, you may be one of the top 5 teams in the country.
Which also then gives you the piece of the pie that you get for being a playoff team to the conference.
Correct. Which behooves themselves because the SEC is probably more likely to be one of those teams that get it. It benefits all the other SEC clubs as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. At the end of the day, it will play out to benefit the SEC and the Big Ten. They're going to dictate where this goes moving forward. One
more item on that note. So the NCAA tournament now, we're seeing rumors of an expansion to 72 teams or maybe more. My understanding, though, is they'll keep the 64-team bracket in place for when you get to Thursday and Friday so we can all fill out brackets and be degenerates. But you will have more play-in or first 4 or first 8 games. They can sell them as NCAA tournament games, so that Tuesday night and Wednesday night in Dayton will now give us like a Monday night or more games. So there will be more teams who make it, meaning more TV inventory to sell as NCAA tournament action.
Right. It won't have an effect on the tournament as we know it. It'll be games earlier in the week to have more opportunities. Again, we talked about this about Major League Baseball. More ad, more TV time, more things for ESPN and its sister networks that cover the NCAA tournament. So it's all about making more money, and they position it as if they're giving other teams an opportunity. But what real opportunity do you have if you happen to win this little mini tournament? You're now the number 16 team playing a Duke, a Florida, and you're going to get bounced. But you have that opportunity, and it's great for their school. It's great for the overall branding and more viewership and more money.
Well, the inventory and the content is what this is always going to be about. And I would add, I'd like to see them actually have play-in games with power conference teams who are like the 7th and 8th seeds in those conferences or 8th and 9th. Because then, like, I got name brands. I'm not watching Southwest Oklahoma State, as you said, battle to be the 16th seed and get to be a sacrificial lamb. One more note here. Back to the SEC media days, Arch Manning, from a player standpoint, Hadley, my understanding, this was not to the Tim Tebow level, because nothing's that, but this was as famous a guy who has got this much hype, and you're talking about the first family of football coming in with the next generation of Mannings, that Arch Manning he's the number 1 Heisman favorite. Like the star power of Arch at SEC Media Days and what we're going to see this season, it's always great for the sport when we have one of these type guys, and he's getting that push.
And he's a good guy. And he, unlike other players we've seen with this new portal, is he didn't leave. He stayed on the bench for 2 years, waiting his opportunity between Ewers, and stayed loyal to the program, loyal to the brand, and is now reaping all the benefits from it. And it was a smart move. Had it not had the NIL, he probably would have left via the portal. But the fact that he was printing money as a backup, waiting for his opportunity, he's one and done. He puts up the numbers this year. He's a first round, potentially the first pick in the draft. So he comes from an amazing, lineage of quarterbacks, and it's great for the sport. And it's great that he's a good guy, and I think people are gravitating toward that. And I'm glad he's true to the brand and true to himself and true to the Manning family.
He's going to be another one who's a business all to himself, especially if Texas ends up playing in a national championship race. All right, coming up, we're going to talk to Kirk Cousins' agent, Mike McCartney, about the saga, the whole saga of Kirk, where we are now, where it goes from here. We'll pick his brain next. All right, we continue with this edition of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, you can download our podcast when they drop new episodes each and every Friday, wherever you get your favorite podcast, and you can watch this, if you'd like, on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, let's welcome in our guest, another one of the brethren, one of the family of agents that Hadley rubs shoulders with from time to time. He's Mike McCartney from Vayner Sports in Atlanta. As we give you this podcast, you'll know him most notably as Kirk Cousins' agent, but he's got a myriad of other clients. He's kind enough to join us right now here on Deals and Deadlines. Mike, we appreciate the time. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning, and good to be with you guys.
Well, we're glad to have you. We like to play This Is Your Life with our guests a little bit to find out how you ended up here. So give me a little background on Mike McCartney, your journey, your path to this place.
Oh, wow. So I grew up in football. My dad was a longtime college football coach, Bill McCartney. He was with the legendary Bo Schembechler at Michigan for 8 years, and he was the head coach of Colorado for 13 years. So football's in my blood, my DNA, and I played quarterback in college. I coached for 5 years at Colorado and North Carolina. I was a pro scout with the Chicago Bears for 6 years and the director of pro scouting for the Eagles for 3 years, and got beat by the Giants. We were driving home. I started taking inventory with my life. I always tell people, don't take inventory after a tough loss. You don't have a clear mind. But the truth is, I had 3 little boys. They were 4, 2, and 1. And I got convicted on that drive home that I was going to wake up in 20 years and ask to raise my kids, because I was never home. And even when I was so distracted on trying to win a Super Bowl, and just felt like I love football, but I had to have some kind of balance in my life. And so left the team side and joined what some call the dark side, but it's been great.
Hey, Mike, be careful there, buddy. I will share
some
this.
Of the league side.
Yeah, I will share this. I obviously I got to know Mike when he was on the players on the team side, and he was always great to work with and communicate with. And when he came over to our side, the better side, I should say the money-making side.
Wow.
He stayed true to who he was and is. And so when you see him at events, always smiling, saying hello, and obviously it's a competitive business, but never took it personal, and has always been good to see and work in the same industry with. And we're glad to have you on the show, because there's a lot to talk about, but I'm glad that, you know, you've come on to this side, Mike, and use that personnel side to your benefit.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, Mike, I think, you know, for us anyway in Atlanta, you know, obviously the Kirk Cousins stuff has been fascinating for a year to watch. And I want to kind of go back to the beginning with you. And knowing your background, I think makes this more interesting, because you have the team side, now you have the agent side. Kirk came out and said he felt misled after he signed his deal with the Falcons when they drafted Michael Pennix. Do you share that same feeling?
Putting me on the spot. You know, I'll say this. And not to
By the way, Mike, the money's guaranteed, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I do believe I have a lot of respect for Terry Fontenot, the general manager. I do believe he led us to believe that they wouldn't draft a quarterback in the first round, and we've had very honest conversations about that. I think I don't want to speak too much for Terry, but how he's handled it since the beginning of 2025 has been terrific. He's been a good communicator. He's owned up to, you know, if he did mislead us or anything like that. So I do have a ton of respect for Terry and the leadership at the Falcons. It's an unfortunate situation, because obviously that's not what we signed up for, to go to Atlanta and have them just draft one in the head. And it's not just a first rounder, it's a top 8 pick. That's a different animal, right? When you take a quarterback at 8 overall, it'd be one thing if it was 28. It wasn't 28, it was 8. So when you take a quarterback in the top 10, you are declaring to your fan base, this is the future. This is the guy that's going to take us hopefully to the promised land. So for Kirk and myself sitting there, that was tough. That was a real tough pill to swallow, and we did not expect that in any way, shape, or form.
Well, let me follow up on that, because I'm fascinated by this, and I've asked Hadley the same thing. So when you're, for a lack of better term going on recruiting tours or visits, is that a talking point of, hey, are you guys even contemplating taking a quarterback? Is that off your radar? And then after they take the quarterback, did they give you guys any kind of, you know, guarantee of like, listen, you're the quarterback for 2 more years, or we're not going to have Michael play right? Like, what are those conversations like?
Well, I would say, of course, we have conversations before we agree to a contract. And I'm a big believer that the quarterback room in particular in an NFL building is a super important and precious room. And so anytime I've had a quarterback, specifically Kirk, I want to know what the quarterback room looks like. I want to know that he's got some kind of a veteran presence with him. You know, of course, the coaches are going to do a great job of preparing him, but there's nothing like peer-to-peer. And to be able to turn to a backup that you trust and knows, and you know that they've been through it, has been invaluable to every quarterback, but certainly Kirk through the years. So we definitely had conversations about the quarterback room, many of them. And not to mention, you know, he loved Minnesota. His wife loved Minnesota. So it wasn't necessarily we were looking to leave Minnesota, but they made it clear on the Viking side that they were going to draft one in the first round and would only commit to Kirk contractually for really 1 year. And that was the difference. You know, Atlanta was willing to commit. And again, we weren't expecting a quarterback in the first round. And we had the contract to sort of tell us that. So it just was such a surprise on draft night. Since then, I would say during the days following, I didn't have any conversation at all. Kirk had certainly some conversation with the coaches in the building, but there were no guarantees. I do think Raheem, publicly was real strong that this is Kirk's team and all that. And until he got injured, he was playing really at a high level, and I don't think the intention was to play Michael last year. But then, of course, Kirk got hurt. His play deteriorated just because he couldn't throw the ball the same, and that opened the door for Michael.
Yeah, just to add to what Mike is saying, as we negotiate these contracts, Matt, you have these conversations, but the very first part of the conversation is financial. And when someone commits close to $100 million to you, you're not worried about are you starting or not starting. You have $100 million. To Kirk's credit, though, it's not just about the money, because he could easily say, all right, I'll be a backup and you're going to have to pay me and I win. But, he wants to play because he's truly a winner and wants to do that stuff. My question to you, Mike, is has this taught you, if you want to use that word, a way that now when you are negotiating deals, is it a question you put at the forefront that you may not have before to find out the status of your client, where he fits on the roster, in addition to, obviously, the salary?
Yeah, I appreciate everything you just said, Hadley, and you're right. It really comes down, these negotiations start and end with money in many ways. I think this was a unique case where my conversations were really about that room and what the roster looked like. We wanted to know, what they looked like up front, the receivers, just to hear their perspective, the run game, all that. Of course, we knew that guys they'd all taken high in the draft, but wanted to hear from their perspective. So before we ever talked money, in this case, just knowing how profile of a position it is, it literally was the first thing we asked, or I asked, was, what's that room going to look like? How's it look like in April? So we had a lot of conversation about this prior to ever even touching the dollars. And once we got that in place, honestly, the dollars part wasn't all that difficult. We got to a place where we were both happy. But it had to start, the foundation had to be, what's the roster going to look like specifically in that room?
Mike, if they would have, and I'm going to use this phrase, and you tell me if I'm not using it correctly, if they would have shot straight with you, knowing Minnesota wasn't going to be in play for more than a year, would another destination have been in play?
I think in play for sure. I don't know what would have transpired. It's still, at the end of the day, Atlanta offered 2 years guaranteed. Minnesota won, and we didn't go down a path with a third team just because we were feeling great about everything we had heard from Atlanta. So it's a tough question to answer. I do know Kirk loved Minnesota, and I don't know what would have happened. It would have been his decision, of course, as you know, Hadley, but would he have said, hey, let's just stay in Minnesota 1 year, I'll know I'll play, go back to the market, or do I take 2 years? Remember, though, we did have the Achilles. That was part of the issue.
Right, so people don't realize that, Mike, let me just jump in on that. People don't realize when you're coming off injuries and now you're offered 2 years of guaranteed money, that weighs a lot on any of these deals. I mean, it could be multiple concussions. It could be a lot of things that people just look at, why are you with this team and where your roster is, but, you're looking at job security or at least financial security.
No doubt. And so it's hard to definitively say what Kirk would have decided at that point. The truth is we knew we had 2 years from Atlanta. We knew what we were, being told about the room. And so we were super excited, when we made that final decision to go to Atlanta and it was, you could see the way Kirk played when he was healthy. It was going to be a good decision. It's just, we had some other issues.
And Mike, one more question on this. Knowing you're not now involved in trade discussions and things like that, except on the outside, has there been any point, because we know Kirk and Arthur Blank sat down and talked and tried to figure out the future, has there been a point where he asked for his release or asked to be given the opportunity to go somewhere else, except if a trade couldn't be worked out?
Yeah, I think it's smart just for us to keep those conversations between us. But there were a lot of conversations with Atlanta, both from myself and Kirk's standpoint. So ultimately, the dominoes fell the way they did, and there wasn't there wasn't either a trade. They made it clear, though, they weren't going to release him. So whether we asked for it or not doesn't even matter, because they just made it really clear from the first conversation in 2025 that he was going to be on the team unless they found a trade partner.
All right, on a separate note, we'll call it a brighter note. I know you and your firm just completed Sauce Gardner's deal with the Jets, and obviously anytime we get opportunities as agents to do deals before the expiration, have them handsomely paid, put them in a better place than once were, it feels good going into the season.
Oh, absolutely. In Sauce, it ends up being a great deal. My partner, AJ Vaynerchuk, just did a terrific job on that deal. As you know, Hadley, when you're getting the guy to be the highest paid in his position in league history, these are not easy negotiations, and they take time, and there's a lot of ebb and flow to them. So I knew there was a chance in talking to AJ, I don't know, a week or so ago, but it finally came together. I think 2 nights ago. Maybe yesterday morning, but it's a great deal for Sauce. He's a terrific player. He didn't have, I don't think, his best year last year, but he's still a terrific player. And I think this new regime really wanted to make a statement. Hey, we're going to take care of our own, and our top receiver and now our top corner back days.
Now, do you, Mike, do the Hadley tour when we get to training camp where, he turns into Jerry Maguire and starts popping in to see all his clients, at camp and gives them hugs like he's tucking in his kids? Will you do that?
No, I got away from that a few years ago. I used to.
He's too big.
Yeah. No,
I used to see Mike on those tours when he was in Philly and Chicago. Now I don't see him so much.
No, you don't see me at those tours. I'm there for my guys, and I'll, certainly dreadfully watch the preseason. But those.
You mean all of 6 Sauce's plays? You mean all 6 of them you're going to watch?
Those I enjoy when they're in and out.
Smart to say it that way.
Kirk didn't play a single snap last year in the preseason. So, So usually, as you know, Hadley, it's more the young guys you're trying to watch and make sure they're, off to a good start, give them feedback. The veterans I don't feel the pressure with those guys necessarily in preseason. It's just those young guys. You want to make sure everything's clicking for them.
Yeah, I was just actually on the phone with one of our young clients yesterday and talking about the preseason, obviously what it means. He's got to obviously make the roster. He was, kind of, 53rd man on the roster, so to speak, and he's got to improve this year. And what happens, and Mike, you can jump in on this, is that, as an agent, our job is, obviously, you hope things work out well for that team, but at the same time, you're monitoring other teams' needs, you're communicating with other teams. Just in case something happens to that player, you want to make sure that player is in the front of their mind, not in the back of their mind.
Absolutely. We just want to make sure they're on their radar. And, I do think the pro side has gotten better. They just have more people, analytics, all those things help them since I was a pro guy. But it's still important for an agent to communicate with other teams, because if there is an issue, whether it's a waiver, a trade, things can move really quickly, and being in communication with teams is really important.
Mike, it's a wonderful story. Your path is an interesting one. Appreciate some of the insight on Kirk, and nothing but the best for you heading into the football season.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
It's fun being on with you guys. Have a great day.
Very much. There's Mike McCartney from Boehner Sports joining us here on Deals and Deadlines. All right, coming up, we'll talk about the NFL, who has to make a decision with one of its TV partners. The business of Caitlin Clark is always on the radar for us to discuss, and baseball has an interesting postseason decision when it comes to some business stuff, which we'll talk about next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley Engelhardt. I'm Matt Chernoff. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day. I'll remind you, subscribe. You can subscribe to this podcast each and every week. Yeah, like he said. On Fridays, new episodes drop wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and again on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, we've got news out of the NFL. Roger Goodell was asked about one of their TV partners, CBS, who is going through a merger with Skydance Media. Could be an $8 billion, these are Hadley Engelhardt type numbers, $8 billion merger, which has everybody questioning whether the NFL will pivot somewhere else before their new TV deal is even going to be on the radar. Goodell says, no, we're going to stick with CBS. This is where the deal was made. It always means something down the road with a potential other option or two. But for now, CBS is going to be continuing its partnership with the NFL.
Yeah, I think Rodgers is playing this smart with the media. I'm not sure what's happening behind the scenes, but publicly he's saying the right things. CBS is our partner. We plan on continuing with them for the long term. what's going on behind the scenes. I think they're going to wait and see what happens with this merger. How does it affect their brand? What are their plans for the future? And decide from there. I think meaning the NFL likes the partnership and what CBS has done from day one till today. Will that continue? It's not just about what they do. It's about how much money they're going to continue to pay. Sure. So with this new merger, if it brings more money, yes, that partnership will stay. If not, the NFL and Roger Goodell will find new ways, and they'll set the path of how sports media works.
And to add to this, Paramount, who's the parent company of CBS, they have their streaming option with Paramount Plus, which the NFL loves. Skydance Media is the company who would be merging with Paramount. You wonder what their plan would be, because everybody's plans change. I don't think anybody walks away from the NFL, but again, you never know what the direction of that TV.
And I think they're having those conversations because obviously, like we just talked about with Mike McCartney about transparency and communication. I think with this merger, they'd be a fool not to have this talk with Roger Goodell in advance of what their plans are moving forward, because they want to continue the branding of the NFL on CBS.
Okay, so we have a decision from Major League Baseball that I think is interesting to the business and the bottom line. Baseball was going to decide if the Tampa Bay Rays made the playoffs, where would they potentially play playoff games? Right now they're playing at Steinbrenner Field, which is the Yankees spring training facility and complex. It's a minor league stadium. So there was talk of if Atlanta was open or if Texas was open or if Miami, that they would move their postseason games. Baseball's decided they're going to play in Steinbrenner Field. So if it's in the regular season, the postseason, or the World Series, could you imagine a World Series in a stadium that holds, I don't know, 11,000 people?
I think it's 10,000 and change.
So it's not going to look great, but maybe it's the easiest way to do it logistically.
Well, let me answer this in a few different parts. Number one, if Atlanta's open, Atlanta will be open. I don't think we're going to be a World Series type of team this year. I think there's a lot of moving parts here. The fact that the team is now being sold and they want to keep it in Tampa, they're smart, Major League Baseball, to keep everyone in the Tampa community, future sponsors, very happy. So if they were to move it, I think that would be a black eye and give the new owner a reason not to keep the team in Tampa. So I think they're trying to do a kumbaya thing where they're keeping it in Tampa. If things play out that Tampa makes it as far as they do, they'll figure it out. It doesn't affect the media rights. It doesn't affect the media money. It only affects the attendance, which only hurts Tampa Bay and their franchise. But they're selling it, and the new ownership understands it. And it looks like, I've talked to some people in the Tampa, St. Pete area, this team will end up in Tampa. Yeah. And I think that's going to be better for the Rays. It's going to be better for Major League Baseball. I think you'll find a new stadium. You'll have an All-Star game there in the future. And I just believe it's going to be this new ownership group is going to do a lot for Tampa and for Major League Baseball. All
right, let's touch on Caitlin Clark, who seems to have a place on this podcast each and every week. So Caitlin had her first matchup with Paige Bueckers. First time these two have met as pros. The game drew over 2 million viewers, 2.1 million viewers. It's the fourth most watched WNBA game. And I think Caitlin's 3 of the 4 now.
Correct.
She's been involved with. So the regular season Caitlin business is there. WNBA also announced part of the three-point shootout. Caitlin will be in that field with Kelsey Plum and a few others. So you want to say this as kind as possible. You want to make sure you wring everything out of the Caitlin business. And again, I know that sounds harsh, but you want to know that she's the face and she's the brand and she's going to bring eyes, that you want her wrapped around All-Star Weekend the way you would in a regular season as well.
Yeah, we've talked about this time and time again about Caitlin Clark and her brand and her value that she brings to the WNBA and women's sports overall. You know, the numbers speak loudly. When she's playing, viewership's up 50%. The attendance is up 50%. Merchandise is through the roof with her. So she is the face and she is the WNBA. My gut tells me the powers to be with the WNBA got on their hands and knees and begged her, please be in the three-point competition. We need those additional eyes. Otherwise, no one's going to watch it. Right. They're just not going to watch it. And I'm guilty of that myself. I'll watch it now that she's playing in it. If she's not, I can care less. I think that she is, you know, I'm just hoping that we talk about this time and again, that they continue to embrace her, the players embrace her, and understand the value that she's bringing, because the numbers speak for themselves.
Listen, there's always going to be time for more Caitlin Clark discussion when it comes to a business standpoint. And Hadley's going to be the guy that keeps us in the loop on all those things moving forward. I'll remind you, please subscribe to this podcast. You can do it on any podcast platform. Search Deals and Deadlines. You can also watch us on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. We'll do it again next week on Deals and Deadlines.